All right, hi, everybody. Midweek edition. Believe in Bills. Adam Benigni of WGRZ TV. Sal Maiorana of the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. Preseason game coming up, number one coming up this weekend at the new stadium. Sal, when last we spoke, my friend, the obstructed view seat angle on the new stadium was just kind of percolating or beginning to emerge, and we had recorded the morning after Sunday morning. So that has become like a full bloom issue right now nationally.
Sure has.
And I know that you've been in on it. I know that we had some comments that we didn't really address it specifically. We did talk about the canopy and all of those things, but really didn't get into it because I, at the time, and I don't think you did either, realized it was going to become the story that it actually did.
No, it was unfortunate. It kind of put a damper on the whole, festivities, the debut night at the stadium. I think the vast majority of fans, Adam, loved the stadium. There's always going to be some people who are going to bitch and moan. I bitch and moan about everything, so I'm not gonna call those people out. But there were some obstructed view seats. Now, here's the thing, Adam. I don't know if those people. They had to know going in, right? They all pretty much, I think, took a virtual tour to get, the view from where their seat was. And I can't imagine the Bills were hiding these aspects. So they had to see what they were going to be dealing with. Maybe they got to the stadium and it was worse than they originally thought. I don't know. But ultimately they paid their money, and I think they probably knew what they were getting. So it's kind of tough to blame the Bills for this, or the architects, or whatever. Now, I will say this. I mean, I saw some of the pictures that have been posted. You have too. Yeah. And it has come out that some of those pictures were taken of seats that are not going to be sold for football games. They're in the building. And I guess if they have concerts, if the stage is set in a certain way, they're going to be able, you can view the concert from there, or some other event that might be in the stadium. But for football games, those won't be sold. So that's good news, I guess. But I mean, it's hard to be too pissed if you knew what you were getting into in the first place. I mean, you picked your seats. You had to see that there was going to be a railing there, or a glass partition, or whatever the obstruction is. So, I feel bad that people were so pissed about it, but I mean, what are you going to do? Now, I started to say, and I got off track. It is a little bit strange to me in this day and age of architectural advancement and engineering advancement that this would be an issue, right? I mean, I made the point in my story yesterday about Wrigley Field and Fenway Park were built over 100 years ago. They have, beams that block seats. I mean, you can understand it back then. Yeah. But today, it is surprising that they would build a stadium where you would have seats where you would have something in front of you. So I am surprised by that. Some of the explanation from some of the people that have talked about it are it's just a necessary evil in these stadiums. It's just going to happen. But I don't know, man. Figure it out. I mean, when Atlanta and Minnesota and LA opened, I didn't hear any backlash about obstructed view seats. Maybe there were, and we didn't see it, but this seems a little bit unique.
Yeah, it does. Of all the narratives you hear, because these stadiums are coming online so frequently, right, in the National Football League. And right now, this is the one that's the focal point. And then, I guess Nashville's the next one that's going to unveil or whatever. There's a steady progression as the NFL emerges with the revenue-producing capabilities and the requirements for all of this type of stuff. This is the first time I've heard the obstructed seat narrative. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't exist. I don't know. And neither you nor I are stadium architects, one. Or two, I don't know what may exist in other venues and facilities around the National Football League, some of the newer ones, right? It does surprise me, and I do understand the narrative and the general reaction, even if you haven't purchased season tickets or paid a PSL or whatever, that, the amount of taxpayer money that went into this facility, right? And to have these types of complaints emerging about it upon its grand opening. I mean, I understand taxpayers, right, questioning that, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, how can this
absolutely.
possibly happen, especially given the public personal, public private combination that these stadiums are financed with in this day and age?
Yeah, it is. It is. Like I said, it's surprising that it could happen, but again, we don't know for sure. There, other places probably do have obstructed view seats. I'm glad to know that some of those seats that, that popped up are not going to be sold for football. That's good. But, it is, like I said, it's surprising. Now, all the bitching and moaning about, there was two other things that I really mentioned in my article, which everyone else is too. One, I sort of agree with. My initial impression when I walked in that stadium for the first time, whatever it was, back in March, I guess it was the first tour, I did notice the scoreboards look small to me. Yeah. They did not. I mean, I've been in places, these new places, these boards are massive and they're incredible. And I was really underwhelmed. And then when we saw them go online during the practice, again, I was underwhelmed by the size of the screen that they were using to broadcast the game and do replays. Now, maybe that can change, during the game. They can widen it, use more screens, because a lot of it was like one part of it is stats and the score or whatever. And then of course they got advertising, maybe they can fiddle around with it, but there's the one end is bigger. And then the other end is definitely a smaller board. And the Bills made this point about how they don't want the fans focused on the scoreboard. I guess Pagula had said, I don't want my fans just staring at the scoreboard all day. I want them involved in the game. Okay, fine. That seems kind of lame to me. But then they invested all this money. I mean, they made a big point of telling us how much they invested in the sound system. Now, Adam, look, a sound system is nice, but what's more important? A bigger board where you can watch replays of the game, or a sound system where you could hear the music that they play and the advertisements that they run? Like, honestly, who gives a shit about the sound? As long as it's good sound, but why does it got to be state-of-the-art, super best in the world stadium sound? I mean, when a concert comes in there, they're not going to be using the sound system, right? I'm pretty sure that these bands all have their own sound systems.
Yeah, they all have their own rigs. Now, do they tap into the state? I don't know. Maybe. I'm thinking of the Sphere out in Las Vegas, where like there are speakers like everywhere. That's a separate, that venue's designed for music. Exactly. I'm just saying in the modern day and age, your sound system in-house may enhance some concert experience. That maybe. May be true. I
don't know how it works, but for that, great. If it works for a concert, great. But in game, I mean, if I'm in the stands, I don't need to have my ears split. And I like my music loud, Adam. I do, but I don't need to be in the stadium during timeouts listening to loud music or advertisements on this great sound system. I'd rather have a big scoreboard that when I want to watch a replay, it's big and bold and great. And that was one complaint that I kind of agreed with fans. The other one was the canopy. And look, this has always been stupid to me, Adam, that fans are going to bitch about this canopy, because they say it covers 65%. That's an estimate, first of all, by the Bills. And guess what? Even if that was accurate, then 35% of you are going to get wet, right? And as we talked about on the last show, when the rain's coming in sideways, which it almost always does, that 65% number is probably going to change. So why people were bitching about, I was told I was going to be dry. No, you were told you might be dry. You might be dry. It's still an open air stadium. So get over it. Everyone railed against, we don't want a dome. We're Buffalo. We want the elements. Well, you got the elements. So shut the hell up about it. That was the complaint that really was like, what are you people talking about here? Like, what are you complaining about that for? You're in Buffalo. You asked for an open air stadium. So that was silly.
It limits the wind, right? The impact of it. And the wind, affects the rain, obviously. And we talked about this on the last show. But if you've got that predominant southwest wind, right, whipping in there off of Lake Erie, right? And I'm sorry, like you can try and offset Mother Nature, but unless you build a retractable roof, you're not gonna
you're not gonna beat Mother Nature. Exactly.
Right.
Now I did hear, and I wasn't down there, so I don't know. I heard it's windy in the concourses. because that storm moved in the other night and it did bring some wind. And I had read some people had talked about how the concourses were really windy. That won't be great in the wintertime.
No.
Right? I mean, you might have a lessening effect inside the stadium that they've been advertising this big time about how the wind's going to be less in this new stadium. But if you're in that concourse in line to go to the bathroom or get food and it's freezing cold in there, that's not great either. So
okay,
whatever.
So 2 points to complement what you just said and react to. I'm thinking about not only new stadiums, but current ones that have had their first full renovations. And that, look at what I'm talking about, the scoreboard issue here. Look at what the hell Robert Kraft did in New England at Gillette on that lighthouse end of the stadium. They redid the whole thing, man. And what's the major feature? I don't know if that's the biggest scoreboard. I'm trying to remember. You and I cover the Rams games at SoFi and everything. But that scoreboard.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one's in Dallas. That thing's unbelievable how big that one is.
Yeah, and they do like in SoFi, they've got them elevated and the kind of the wraparound things above. The one in New England though is that it basically takes that whole end, right? Yep. And they built like suites above it, I think. But it's an unbelievable scoreboard, and that, by the way, happens to be the end from which, the press box in New England's in the opposite upper corner. So you're looking from where we sit, you kind of look down on that. So it's almost like it's a featured element from being high up like that. But again, that kind of makes your point. For fans seated up and away, you've got a replay, and boy, you look at that thing, it's incredible. And so the Bills fall short in that area, this new stadium.
They do. I mean, it's a nice scoreboard. Obviously, they're nice scoreboards, but I just think that fans were right about that one. They could have been a little bit bigger. So they're not. Live with it, I guess. But so that was a legit complaint, I thought. Like I said, the canopy was just silliness. And then the obstructive views, unfortunate is what I would call that. But let's also remember, Adam, there's very limited number of them. Right. Most of the seats in the place are great. The sight lines are great. That was one thing about the old stadium that nobody ever complained about. The sight lines in that old stadium were as good as any in the league. Yep. It might have been an old decrepit stadium, but the sight lines were great. I think they're still pretty good in this stadium. So if you don't have an obstructive, if you're one of the 59,000 something, it's probably more than that actually, that don't have obstructed view, you're probably pretty happy with the place.
So one final point with the obstructed view before we move on. I saw a clip from WGR Sports Radio here in Buffalo. Jeremy White was on, and they had one of the designers of the stadium on, and specific to like those railings where, and maybe on the tour you had exposure to this, but like when you're going from, the 300 level, the stairs up to the 400, and they've got to make the turn there, and that's where those railings are blocking the view, that type of thing. That the designer made the point that it was a trade-off in order to accomplish that, or in order to accomplish how these concourses, you can leave, go to the bathroom, go get a beer, go get concessions, whatever, and then still have a view of the field. Right? In order to get that done, they had to have the stairways constructed the way they were, and those railings becoming a factor. Now they have them glassed, right? So you can kind of see through them. But I can see the frustration associated with that. That's not to discredit any argument from a ticket holder that purchased that thing or had a different perception of what reality was going to be. But at the same time, one of the prominent features of this new stadium is that open concourse where you can do a lot of things away from your seat and still have a view of the football game. And it was a trade-off and kind of a byproduct of that. Yeah. It was a pretty clear explanation. So I suppose, in design, again, neither one of us are architects. My dad actually was. He had he didn't build stadiums, but homes and that sort of. A lot of times in design, there's trade-offs, and that seemed like one of them, which may be leading to a good number of these complaints.
And again, I don't know, but it was explained. I heard a fragment of that on Twitter. Somebody put a clip up. So, hey, whatever. I get it, but like I said, if you have one of those seats, I'd be a little bit disappointed too. People point out, we look through the glass when you're sitting down low for a Sabres game. Oh yeah, I don't like that either. I've sat down low for Sabres games and really didn't like looking through the glass. So I can understand why Bills fans aren't happy about it. But,
and also too, you're going to have people coming up those stairs on a regular basis. I guess what I read is that it's going to be a to the whistle type situation where, and I've experienced this in other arenas when I've attended events as a fan, where they'll hold people back during the course of play, right, and not have them flowing up and down the stairways during the game to offset, to enhance the view for people who are sitting there. In other words, so you're not going to have a stream of people who are going to and from their seats blocking their view when you're in one of those. I did read that that's going to be, that the plan was to implement that. That may not have been the case for the open practice the other night, given the nature of the event itself. Right. Okay. All right. So we just spent about 16 minutes on that. Probably could spend more, but it's an unfortunate, for a stadium coming online like that and for the taxpayer money associated with it. I certainly understand how that would raise some eyebrows and cause some concern. So the Bills say they're going to deal with that on a case-by-case basis. And moving forward, first preseason game coming up on Saturday. So with that being said, let's just quickly discuss. We haven't heard from Joe Brady yet, who's going to play how much, but I did find it interesting that Jim Leonard, the new defensive coordinator, did talk about the importance of these preseason games and giving would-be starters some exposure because of the new scheme to try and execute that new scheme under the base of it anyway, under game conditions that he considered that important.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that the Bills starters need to play a little bit in the preseason. This is not Sean McDermott's defense where everyone knows what they're doing for 9 years. This is a whole new scheme. You've got 3 opportunities to face other teams, right? In an actual game situation, this is where you're going to work out some of the kinks. Now, obviously, they're not going to be playing. Matter of fact, the starters, I bet, won't even play at all in the second game against Cleveland because they're probably going to get work in the joint practice and then totally sit that game out. And then even the third game, as the thunder is starting to roll here, it's pouring outside. Holy smokes. In that third game, that's typically, not a starters game either. They're probably not going to play. So this first game, you need to get your starters out there and get them a little bit of exposure. So I don't know how long they'll play. I mean, Brady, maybe he'll tell us, maybe he won't. I would guess a quarter, like it usually is the case.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy in Carolina, Canales, said his guys are going to go 10 to 20 snaps, depending on the game flow. That's what I'd expect from the Bills. So yeah, Leonard needs to see these guys. There's too much decision-making that has to be done on the defensive side. Josh Allen, Joe Brady knows what Josh Allen and the offense can do. Get them out there for a series or two and then be done with it. There's nothing more to see. But defensively, Leonard needs his guys out there.
Well, I think there is also a stadium acclimation aspect to this. I think you do want a little bit.
I mean,
right?
Adam, I'll be honest. A lot of that to me is overblown. I mean, these coaches are such paranoid wackos. It's a football stadium, right? Once you see where the play clock is, and you figure out a couple of the views, you play in different stadiums every week. That to me is overblown. So I guess maybe, okay, it'll be their first actual game in there, but they just did this the other night. And I think a lot of that was probably already ironed out, the communication, how that's going to work. Leonard did say that it was very loud in the place. So communication, they're going to have to keep working on that because when the defense is on the field, it's when the crowd is the loudest. He said it was very loud in there, and it wasn't even that loud, to be honest. It was probably more the music that was playing in the background that made it loud. So that'll be things they'll have to work out. But yeah, some of that's overblown.
Yeah, to me, it's not an excuse to expose Josh Allen any more than you ordinarily would to any threat of injury.
He should be out there because it's the first game in the new stadium, right? He should be the quarterback that takes the first snap in that stadium and then play him for a series, maybe 2 if it's a quick 3 and out, and then get him out. As I said, it's more important for the defense. There are so many guys on this defense, Adam. I mean, if you're going to start 11, I would say there's probably 23 or 24 guys that are kind of like jockeying for roles in that defense, right? I mean, you've got your starters, your rotation guys. There's going to be flip-flopping of positions. There's a lot to figure out on defense. So they need to be on the field and playing in a game to do that.
So you had written along those lines, just a couple of quick points before we wrap this up, like kind of a 3 up, 3 down situation in terms of players and for fans who would be watching and trying to predict the roster and the cut downs and all that, who's impressed you most in terms of kind of up and comers?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few guys who have stood out, I thought. Alfred's one. In fact, I just wrote a separate story about him this morning as I talked to him. He spoke the other day after practice. He's been really good. In fact, he made a pick in the game at the stadium, the practice, and then he had a beautiful pick yesterday. He was actually on the outside. He was playing boundary corner, and he jumped a route, and Allen threw it right to him for an interception. He's looked good, and I think what's nice about him, I asked him, and part of my story was that you're replacing Taron Johnson, the longtime nickel corner here, but you're really not replacing him because they're going to play their corner or their nickel corner pretty much, very differently. Taron Johnson was like a third linebacker. D. Alfred is not going to be a third linebacker, and he even said, "Yeah, I'm a cover guy. I'm going to fit the run when I have to, obviously, but I'm there. They brought me in to be a cover guy." And I think he's got the versatility that he can push outside if they change, a scheme or whatever. And he proved it. Like I said, he had a pick the other day on the boundary. So he's been nice. I wasn't sure, what they were getting there, and knowing that, Taron Johnson was a pretty good player until the injury started to get him a little bit at the end. He was a damn good player for the Bills. So that was going to be a position of, something to watch. Alfred stepped in really, really well. I had Elim Zor as an up-and-comer. Everyone has him as an up-and-comer. This guy, Adam, he is among the most intense people I've ever seen. I don't know if the guy can smile. I honestly don't know if he has that emotion in him. People say that about me all the time. I get it.
I was going to say, that's where I was going to go.
This dude is ball, intense all the time. He doesn't smile about anything, and that's good. I mean, he has made some eye-opening plays for this defense. I'm not going to say that he's going to push Williams or Bernard out of the starting lineup, but I also would not be surprised.
I know. Well, there were some that had like a first-round grade on him, I read.
Yeah. I know Chris Trapasso, our friend, who does his own thing. He does his own draft guide now. He had him as a first-round grade. And I'll tell you what, from what I've seen in camp, now these games are going to show much more than these practices, but he looks like a gamer to me. That looks like a guy that could be here, like as we've talked about. Dorian Williams is a free agent. Bernard could be a salary cap casualty at some point in the next year or two. This guy could be the next, the next inside linebacker for several years. So I liked him a lot too. Now, a couple guys that I'm wondering about, like, I don't know if I mentioned it here, but I'd written about Mike Dana, who they signed from the Chiefs.
Right.
He was sort of signed, I think, as an insurance policy in case Michael Hoyt's Achilles was giving him problems. Well, that hasn't been the case. So at this point, with Hoyt looking like he is full go and ready to play, you've got Hoyt, Rousseau, Chubb, Parker, and then you've got Javon Solomon, who I talked to him Tuesday, and he really likes his role in the defense. He's much more confident. He's a core special teamer. There's 5 outside linebackers, and then you got Mike Dana, so who's not going to play special teams. So I wonder about, where that's going to go. Unless they have an injury or two, he might be a guy that they don't keep. And then Dwayne Carter was another one that Fedarian Mathis has actually been getting more first-team run when they've switched things out than Dwayne Carter. I think Carter and Mathis are playing for one spot, the backup to Deion Walker at the nose tackle. And right now, I'd have to say that Mathis might be in the lead there. We'll see. Again, these games are going to be really important for the defensive line especially, and that's a battle I think you should probably be paying attention to.
Woody, just quickly, last point here before we put a wrap on this edition of Believe in Bills presented by FanDuel. Offensively, I mean, there's the left guard spot. What else are you looking for kind of inside the X's and O's aspect of this? Yeah,
those two guys really have split it. I mean, there's really been no lean one way or the other between Anderson and Corbett. So, we'll see. The games are they're probably going to tell the most about what's going to happen. Corbett's on a 1-year deal. Anderson's on a cheap deal. I don't think you're really saving much money either way, although I think they would probably keep Corbett. I mean, if he doesn't win the starting job, I don't think they're going to cut him. I think they would keep him as a backup interior. They're probably going to keep 9 offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you'd want to have a guy like Corbett on your team just in case, sort of like with Cushenberry. Right now it's Cushenberry and Cedric Van Pran-Granger who are filling in for Connor McGovern. I don't know, man. Van Pran-Granger's been here 2 years. He really, obviously, because they've had really no injuries, he hasn't been able to get in except for the 2 games at the end of the year, which were meaningless. He started. Cushenberry's played 80 games in the NFL. He started all 80 games he's played. If I'm the Bills, I would lean towards him as being the guy that wins that job. I mean, if McGovern's injury is going to linger, plus if he gets hurt during the year, be nice to have a guy like Cushenberry who could just step right in, as opposed to Van Pran-Granger, who we really don't know too much about.
All right. Interesting stuff, Sal. We appreciate it as always. And Brady's going to speak when? Friday? Is that what we expect to hear from him? Thursday.
And maybe
yes. It'll be this is our first go around with him in terms of a preseason game, right? What he's going to reveal in terms of, but I don't expect, aside from Leonard's comment about the defense, anything particularly out of the ordinary as far as starter reps are concerned and the approach heading into this thing.
Yeah, I think he's kept everything close to the vest. Like we were talking the other day, we've heard nothing on injuries, which is a little bit aggravating. We still have no idea what Max Harrison's injury is. We're assuming it's groin. We don't technically know what McGovern did. We think it's hamstring. We're guessing on all these injuries. They have not been forthcoming. They don't have to be now, but usually it's a courtesy that they at least let you know, like, okay, he's dealing with this or that. We've heard nothing. We're all in the dark. So I'm guessing as to what the injuries are and how long the timetables are. So we'll see if he talks about it Thursday. He's going to get asked. I guarantee you, we haven't talked to him since Saturday night. And he had no information because I asked him directly what happened with McGovern and Ty Johnson. I'll know more Monday. Well, okay. Well, he's not talking till Thursday. So they've given us no updates. So we'll see.
All right. Well, he is going to get asked. And Sal Maiorana is one that typically does a lot of the asking, right?
Well, you got it. People want to know, right? I want to know. And the people.
I'm not around anymore, and I'm not down there doing that day to day. But you got to hold feet to the fire, or at least try and get as much information as you possibly can. I know that so much is shrouded in secrecy, and I understand all of that. But regardless, so we'll look forward to that. Any type of update or whatever, keep you updated here on Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel. FanDuel, presenting sponsor for this show and others here in the Believe network of podcasts, list the Bills' regular season win total at 9.5 or 10.5 wins, depending upon the specific futures market. There's another that predicts that's low.
I haven't heard 9.5.
9.5 is the lowest. I called that up here just for the FanDuel spot before we wrap this. 9.5 is low. There's going to be issues if they're down in that neck of the woods. Another has them at 12-5.
9.5 is low, but it's believable, Adam.
It is.
With this schedule, that's believable. I mean, and who knows if that's good. If they win 10, is that going to be good enough to get to the playoffs? Maybe. I don't know. But I mean, everyone's talking about, the Bills are going to roll past the Patriots and win the division. I don't see it that way.
I don't know.
This is a tough. If they win, I had them 11-6. I think that's going to be the top for them. I don't see them getting past 11, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's 9 or 10. So that's just me, but it's a tough schedule, man.
So you look at some of the numbers. The win total line set around 9.5 to 10.5. With an over at -145. That was on FanDuel. Projected overall record, the consensus on that, I guess, is at 12-5. You had just mentioned 11-6. AFC East odds, heavy favorites to win the division. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Super Bowl, they remain at +1,000, just behind the Rams as Super Bowl favorites. So it's kind of, and that's Vegas, but a lot of questions, and the process of answering them continues, obviously, on Saturday with this first preseason game. So for Sal Maiorana of the Rochester Democrat Chronicle, Adam Benigni, WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live Buffalo. Want to mention here, special edition of the show coming up Monday night at 7 o'clock on Channel 2. We're going to do a training camp sort of preseason edition, and then we're back in full Sports Talk Live on Channel 2 week 1. Again, Monday nights at 7. Vic Carucci, John Scott, and myself will be handling that. So we hope you join us for that and continue to join us here on Believe in Bills. Thanks for being with us.